Hello again, and welcome to the interchange intro video for Unit 6. And today we are talking about simple present questions. Okay, so let's get started. Does Homer have a family?
Yes, he does.
Do they have a house?
Yes, they do.
What does he like?
He likes donuts.
Where do they live?
They live in Springfield.
Okay, today the grammar is the question for the simple present. The question in the simple present, we start with an auxiliary. For the subjects I, you, they, and we, the question auxiliary is do. So do, then the subject, then the verb. Now, a question like this is a yes/no question. Yes and no. So, when we say yes to the question, we say yes, and then the subject, and then do, the auxiliary. When we say no, we say no, the subject, and don't, the negative auxiliary. Very good. Now, for the third person, remember, he, she, and it is for the third person. Our auxiliary for the question is does. It's the third person conjugation. So we use does, the subject, and the verb. And remember, we use the normal verb, no S. The third person conjugation is on the question auxiliary. For example, does. Now, when we say yes to the question, we say yes, the subject, and does. Again, the auxiliary. And no, we say no, the subject, and doesn't, the negative auxiliary. Okay, remember, for the question, we use the auxiliary do or does to start the question. Then the subject, then the verb. Very good. So let's practice. For example, the question is do they watch TV? Again, the auxiliary do, because my subjects are they. Do they? And then the verb watch. Do they watch TV? Now, the answer is yes, they do. But for this one, the answer is no, they don't. Very good. Alright, another example. So, the question is, does he eat breakfast? Remember, the third person question auxiliary does because my subject is he, and then my verb eat. Does he eat breakfast? Now, the answer, yes, he does. Or, for this example, no, he doesn't. Very good. Okay, more practice. More practice with the verb like. The question, does Homer like his neighbor? No, he doesn't. This example, does he like donuts? Yes, he does. Remember, the auxiliary for these questions is does because my subject is about he, Homer. Very good. Okay, the next example with study. Study. For example, do you study Spanish? Do you study Spanish? No, I don't. Or do you study English? Yes, I do. So remember, the auxiliary is do for the question because my subject is you in the question. Very good. Okay, the next part of the grammar are WH questions. WH questions are the same as normal questions, but with a WH question word. So we use WH question word and the auxiliary and the subject and the verb. So for example, where do they live? The question word, the auxiliary, do, my subject, they, and the verb, live. Where do they live? They live in Springfield. Very good. And remember the third person conjugation. It's the same, but remember to use the third person question auxiliary, does. So for example, what time does he wake up? The question word, what time, the auxiliary, does, my subject, he, and my normal verb, wake up. Remember, this is the third person conjugation on the question auxiliary. So what time does he wake up? He wakes up at 5:30. Okay, time to practice. Practicing with the verb work. For example, where does he work? Where does he work? And the answer, he works at a nuclear power plant. And remember the conjugation S for the subject he. Third person conjugation. Very good. For the verb eat, eat. What time do they eat dinner? What time do they eat dinner? And the answer, they eat dinner at 6:30. Very good. Okay, for the verb take a shower. For example, what time does he take a shower? What time does he take a shower? And the answer, he takes a shower at 5:45. And remember, the verb and the answer with the third person conjugation for he. He takes a shower. Very good. Okay, now the verb study. For example, what do you study? What do you study? And the answer, I study English. Very good. Okay, one more with the verb play. Play. For example, when does she play the saxophone? When does she play the saxophone? The answer is she plays the saxophone on Mondays and Wednesdays. Very good. Okay, to review, the yes/no questions use do and does for the auxiliary, then the subject, then the verb. And the answer, we say yes and the subject and do or does, and no, the subject, don't or doesn't. For example, does Homer have a family? And the answer, yes, he does. And for the WH question, remember, we use a WH question word, do and does for the auxiliary, the subject, and the verb. For example, where do they live? And of course, the answer is they live in Springfield. Okay, now you know how to make simple present questions. Okay, thanks for watching and good luck.